What does a potential delay past the August 1st deadline mean for Canada?
Well, the delay or the deadline itself is one that was constructed by the U.S. president in the letter that he sent out just a couple of weeks ago. So I think the best deal for Canada, which is what I believe our government is negotiating on right now, is not dependent on that date. So I would say, and that's a message I heard echoed by premiers when they met this week, and the Prime Minister was there to brief them on the state of the negotiations. I think everybody here is willing to see a good deal struck in the time that it takes to strike it.
What do you see as a good deal for Canada?
Well, certainly something that deals with these 232 tariffs. The 232 tariffs are the ones that we're seeing right now on steel and aluminum and have been threatened on copper and auto parts. These are punitive and damaging to our sectors, and they're also very expensive for our buyers who are predominantly U.S. buyers. And so seeing those 50% tariffs come down is a priority. The thing to remember in all of this is that Canada does have a trade deal with the United States, and it's still in effect. It's called CUSMA. And anything that's traded from Canada to the U.S., which is CUSMA compliant, and that's about 90% or more of our trade, has a zero tariff on it. And so that's the majority of our trade. But what the negotiating teams are really looking at is dealing with some of these other concerns that the U.S. has raised around fentanyl, border security, and of course, these sectors that they are targeting that I mentioned earlier.
Could we see this ending up in the courts?
Well, we've had the CUSMA agreement has a number of dispute mechanisms and resolution mechanisms, and those have been used in the past between U.S., between Mexico and Canada. And primarily, Canada's come out on the other side of those with a win or with a validation of our position. What we're seeing from the United States right now is really a rethinking of the full deal and the full approach to trade that we're, between us and the United States, but with all of their major trading partners. So a dispute mechanism or the courts, I don't think is something that the Canadian side is looking at right now. There are some challenges within the U.S. court, and I believe on July 31st, the Supreme Court will be hearing one of the lower level courts which had thrown out the so-called Liberation Day tariffs. But really our strategy here is, I think, to strike an agreement that the Canadian side and the American side both agree to and not have to litigate this further.
And how are businesses doing through all this? How are they coping with the unknown and the uncertainty?
Well, the uncertainty is certainly chilling for business. It's very difficult for any proper planning or investment or capital decisions to be made, and that's everything from job hiring to developing or building a new plant to launching a new product to moving into new markets. What we have seen is that goods exporters, so Canadian companies that sell things to the United States, almost 30% of them are now redirecting to other countries. So they're starting to diversify who they trade with. And over 37% of them, so over a third, are starting to source from outside the United States, the components, the ingredients, the parts they need to make their things. And so what that signals to us at the Canadian Chamber is that we're seeing Canadian companies not trust this relationship as much as they have in the past and start to diversify who they trade with. And for the well-being of our economy over the longer term, that's not a negative thing. The more diversified our trade, the more resilient we are and the lower risk we have.
Okay, Matthew, thank you very much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
Matthew Holmes is the Senior Vice President of Policy and Government Relations at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce.